Well, Greg McElroy did not beat around the bush at all when he was talking about Georgia's, you know, thrashing of Michigan the other day. He said that the Georgia Bulldogs manhandled Michigan. Listen, Greg is straight to the point kind of guy, a former Alabama quarterback, won the national championship with Nick Saban. He was the first guy that won it with Nick. And you can already see out there the shifting of narrative about Georgia coming into this Alabama game. And we'll just see how it goes as the week goes on. We got 7 days from when I'm recording this for it to come to the two teams to play. But there's an acknowledgement out there, including from Greg and other folks, just how focused Georgia looked after the Michigan during the Michigan game and after the loss to Alabama. That game was really a lopsided affair in almost every single facet of the game. You look at the run game, obviously the way that Stetson completely outperformed both of Michigan's quarterbacks. And the question that everybody's going to have is if they can manhandle Alabama. I mean, they haven't. I mean, with the exception of the first halves of the games at Mercedes-Benz in 17 and 18, they have not been able to do that to Alabama. And the truth is, the Alabama's defense is coming on. I mean, they're playing better than they did, excuse me, at the beginning of the season. That was a concern for Alabama coming into this thing. The other thing that you're noticing is that the everybody has now not forgotten, because that's going to be a big talking point. It's amazing. It's a little bit like boxing. Once a fight happens, then the ramifications from that are very impactful for a while. Georgia doing what they did to Michigan was opened a lot of people's eyes about Michigan to some degree, certainly about the game that's coming up with Alabama. I think some people still thought some people thought that Alabama would be favored coming into this game, but the way that Georgia, as Greg puts it, manhandled Michigan um, was really, I thought it would be a tougher game than it turned out to be. I mean, Michigan only had 328 yards. I don't know how many of those were in the fourth quarter, but I am going to look right now. Let's see, 100 and 119 were in the fourth quarter. When you just look at this thing, I mean, the first drive, Michigan kind of did something. 7 plays, 34, and then they didn't get that fourth down, and then it was a six play drive for only 3 yards, and then they were on the move again at the beginning of the second quarter and went for 57 yards and kicked that field goal. But even by then, it was almost too late. And then the second quarter was a disaster for Michigan. Uh, 3 plays for 2 yards, a three and out basically, and then the interception that ended the half for Michigan. But by then, the game was over. The problem for Michigan, and this is going to be the challenge for Georgia heading in this Alabama game, Michigan's defense just was not good. They were adequate in the second half, but the game was over by then. So when you look at that game and you say, oh well, they had 119 yards. Now that's rough math. I'm doing this on the fly, y'all. So that means they had about 200 yards the first three quarters of the game. You can't win football games like that. That's just crazy. Um, I thought Georgia would win. I think Georgia will beat Alabama as well. I didn't think Georgia would beat Michigan quite that bad. And it was because of the defense. It was because of the defense and Stetson and the offensive line. I mean, Georgia wound up with 190 yards rushing. There's no reason Georgia can't replicate that against Alabama. But they're going to have to be locked in. They're going to have to be prepared to play completely. And if you're not ready for a national championship game and preparing for a national championship game, you're just not ever going to be ready. I think the other question that maybe folks, the talking heads, are, and I recognize that I'm kind of a talking head too, but another question that I have really more than anything is, did we just see Georgia? Did we see an outlier against Alabama? So in graduate school, I went to graduate school at Georgia, and one of the things that we dealt with in statistics was a regression analysis. I mean, how does something go back to the mean? And what we saw in that Alabama game was a complete outlier on a lot of levels for Georgia, and to some degree for Alabama as well. I mean, Alabama was the best Alabama played this season. So if you're looking at a statistical analysis of things, clearly that was an outlier for Bama, and in a regression analysis, that would mean that they would be in trouble the second time. But that's predicated on things in the past. What we can't know is what will happen in the future. And will it be that Georgia uh, continues to play the way it typically has in 14 games, 13 of 14 games, or will they have another game where they don't play well? Will it be that Alabama plays one of its worst games of the season against Georgia? I don't know. I mean, I don't know which game for Bama has been their worst game. I think probably the LSU game, but LSU can give them fits at times. And who you play really matters a lot in all this stuff. But how Georgia played was really a problem against Bama, and how they played against Michigan, that was not the case. Make sure you're going to dogpost.com to hear more about all this and more. We'll see you over on the website.